It is bigger than Texas, California, and Montana combined. Let that sit for a second. If you peeled Alaska off the map and dropped it on top of the lower 48, it would stretch from the Florida Keys to Lake Superior. It would swallow the entire Gulf Coast. Several states would disappear under it. Its coastline is longer than every other US state combined. It shares a border with two countries. One of them is Russia, just 2.4 miles away at the closest point. On a clear day, you can see it from Alaska. It has active volcanoes, rainforests, glaciers the size of small nations, a mountain so large it creates its own weather systems, and yet the entire state has a population smaller than the city of Tucson, Arizona. Tucson. This is not a state that fits neatly into the category of state. This is something else entirely. This is Alaska. Alaska became the 49th US state in 1959, but geographically it's separated from the rest of the country by an entire foreign nation. To reach it by land, you cross thousands of miles of Canadian wilderness. The nickname is the Last Frontier. Unusually for a state nickname, it's accurate. Alaska is the least densely populated state in America. 1.3 people per square mile. New Jersey has more than 1,200. But what Alaska lacks in people, it more than compensates for in land, resources, and strategic importance. It all starts with a deal most Americans thought was a catastrophic mistake. March 30th, 1867. Secretary of State William Seward signs a treaty purchasing Alaska from the Russian Empire for $7.2 million, about 2 cents per acre. The press is not impressed. Newspapers call it Seward's Folly and Seward's Icebox. Cartoons show Seward handing over bags of cash for a frozen wasteland full of polar bears. But Russia had its reasons. The Crimean War had drained the treasury. Maintaining a distant territory with no infrastructure was expensive, and the British Empire expanding south from Canada represented a real military threat. The Tsar's calculation was simple: better to sell to a neutral country than lose it in a war to a rival. So Russia offloaded the largest piece of land in the Western Hemisphere for less than the cost of a single warship. What the critics didn't know, in 1968 oil was discovered at Prudhoe Bay, the largest oil field ever found in North America. At its peak in 1988, that single field produced 2 million barrels per day, roughly 25% of total US oil output. To move it, engineers built the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, 800 miles through mountains, earthquake zones, and permafrost. Since 1977, it has carried more than 18 billion barrels. Beyond oil, Alaska holds massive reserves of natural gas, gold, copper, zinc, and coal. The U.S. Geological Survey estimates roughly $1 trillion in untapped mineral wealth. Purchase price in 1867, $7.2 million. Estimated resource wealth today, $1 trillion. Seward's Folly turned out to be one of the best real estate deals in history. Alaska's size is hard to process. The state covers 663,000 square miles. Texas, the state Americans reach for when they want a signal size, covers 268,000. Alaska is 2.5 times larger. If it were a country, it would rank 18th in the world by land area, between Iran and Mongolia. And yet, its economy operates differently from most states. Alaska's GDP is around $60 billion, modest by US standards, but the economy was never built around population density. It was built around extracting resources from terrain that would be unworkable for almost anything else. Oil revenue funded the state so thoroughly that Alaska abolished its income tax in 1980. There's no statewide sales tax either, and instead of taxing residents, Alaska pays them. In 1976, the state created the Permanent Fund, a sovereign wealth fund that distributes annual dividend payments to residents. In 2022, the dividend reached $3,284 per person. A family of 4 received more than $13,000 for simply living in Alaska. Oil isn't the only engine. Alaska produces more seafood than every other U.S. state combined, over 60% of all American commercial fish and shellfish. Alaska pollock is the most harvested fish species on Earth by volume. It's in the fish sticks in your freezer. It's in the McDonald's Filet-O-Fish. It comes from the Bering Sea, where vessels operate in conditions that regularly feature 30-foot waves and brutal winds. The ocean around Alaska is essentially a production facility. Alaska is geographically extreme even by global standards. Denali, the highest peak in North America, reaches 20,310 feet. But the number that matters is vertical rise. Denali climbs roughly 18,000 feet from its base, compared to Everest's 12,000-foot rise from the surrounding plateau. By that measure, Denali is arguably the tallest mountain on land on Earth. The summit creates its own weather systems. Temperatures can plunge below -75°F, and about half of all summit attempts fail. Now contrast that with Southeast Alaska. The Tongass National Forest covers 17 million acres of temperate rainforest, the largest national forest in the United States. Ancient Sitka spruce rise over 200 feet, while brown bears fish salmon in glacier-fed rivers. Same state. The same state that also contains Arctic tundra above the Brooks Range, where the sun doesn't set for 84 consecutive days in summer and winter temperatures hit -40, the one point where Fahrenheit and Celsius agree. Alaska has more than 100,000 glaciers, more than the rest of the world outside the polar regions combined. This isn't one ecosystem. It's several completely different ones packed into a single state. Alaska also operates differently from every other state when it comes to infrastructure. About 75% of Alaska's communities have no road connection to the outside world. Not a bad road. No road at all. The only way in or out is by plane or boat. Bush planes function like cars everywhere else, carrying groceries, mail, and passengers between remote settlements. Because of that, roughly 1 in 58 Alaskans holds a pilot's license, 6 times the national average. In Alaska, aviation isn't a hobby. It's the road system. During World War II, Japan invaded and occupied 2 Aleutian islands, Attu and Kiska. They remain the only American territory occupied by a foreign power during the war. Most Americans have never heard of this. The Aleutian chain stretches 1,200 miles into the Pacific toward Japan and contains 57 volcanoes. When one erupts, ash clouds can shut down trans-Pacific flight routes used by hundreds of commercial flights daily. A volcano on a remote Alaskan island can disrupt air travel on the other side of the world. And because the chain extends so far west, Alaska contains both the easternmost and westernmost points of the United States, which are, remarkably, the same place. To understand Alaska, you have to look at it differently. It isn't just a state. It's a strategic territory the United States happens to administer as one. Russia is 2.4 miles away. Chinese naval activity in the Pacific is increasing. As Arctic ice declines and new shipping routes open, the region's military and economic importance is growing, not shrinking. Major installations like Fort Wainwright and Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson sit here for a reason. Oil production has fallen 75% from its 1988 peak, and the state is navigating what comes next. The Permanent Fund holds over $75 billion, which buys time. But the transition is real. Environmentally, Alaska matters far beyond its borders. The state is warming at twice the global average rate. As permafrost thaws, it releases methane, accelerating warming worldwide. What happens in Alaska doesn't stay in Alaska. America bought this territory for 2 cents an acre and got laughed at for it. Dark for months, frozen for more, cut off from the road system most of the country takes for granted. And yet, the largest, most resource-rich, most strategically positioned piece of land in the United States. A place that looks less like a state and more like a country that just happens to belong to one. What got you? The Permanent Fund checks. Japan occupying US soil during World War II? The fact that Alaska is 2.5 times the size of Texas? Drop it in the comments. I read all of them. If you're into the economics and hidden history behind places you thought you knew, subscribe. New one every week.